Throughout this presentation, I'll be talking about juvenile delinquency, defining it, and helping us further understand it. So, what is juvenile delinquency? Well, recently it has become a fundamental area of study since the turn of the 20th century. And socially, this can be perceived as an issue that has to do with the way in which we are integrated into society. Legal definitions of juvenile delinquency incorporate an emphasis on how dependent adolescents remain with needs for both nurture and protection, as well as how important it is to continue to endorse distinguishing juvenile offenders from adult criminals to provide a separate system of justice. The term juvenile delinquency refers to criminal behavior specifically carried out by a juvenile that does not conform to both the legal and moral standards of society. Each state defines what constitutes delinquency and the furthest extent in which the state can intervene in a juvenile's life under the juvenile court codes. So although it remains a challenge to define juvenile delinquency in terms of deviance from behavior norms because norms vary extensively. Now, there have been many theories that have attempted to discuss the leading causes of delinquency in adolescence, but they are insufficient to defining how delinquency and crime are interrelated. Each juvenile offense is due to a variety of complex causes that often date way back before the committal, and others whose origins remain immediately tied with the act of delinquency. Some of the leading causes of delinquency can be identified as being exposed to physical abuse, maturing early, violence, health problems, family issues, inadequate education, exploring sexuality early, negative social interactions, and substandard living. Importantly, family relationships are interrelated with the way in which a child socializes and behaves in accordance to delinquency, which is why this is one of the leading causes of delinquency because of family is absent as a unit, inadequate in supervision, or overall strict discipline that can increase the likelihood of delinquency. Research has also shown a connection between child abuse and juvenile delinquency. So basically, juveniles with preceding negative experiences tend to participate in delinquent behaviors that lead to unintentional injuries and violence. So what is the importance of the public school system relative to the detection and prevention of juvenile delinquency? Well, the school holds a central place among all agencies that affect the ideas and activities of children. Since delinquents are more likely to reside in the school system, this gives the schools the weighted responsibility to both detect and prevent delinquency. So to properly address behavioral concerns, pupil personnel services are offered among many of the public school systems. And these services consist of guidance counselors, student resource officers, psychologists, social workers, and other disciplines. And the overall objective of these services is to aid the school in identifying children who need assistance and to also help the children and school treat these difficulties before they result in delinquency. By using these specialized services, it's a critical contribution to the public school system in an attempt to solve the dilemma of delinquency. Furthermore, the public school system's focus needs to be solely on effectively maintaining these special services, complete student records, and a variety of curriculum that will give the attention to the individual child at every age for successful adjustment within the school group. So training teachers to build interpersonal relationships with their students enables personal services to be channeled as supportive programs keen to redirection, while connections between teacher and student can lessen tensions in the learning setting, hopefully increasing the success of special services and how effective they are at preventing juvenile delinquency. Now let's talk about what the problem areas are that have an influence upon juvenile delinquency. There are many common social factors that relate to the persistence and contribution of varying influences upon delinquency. To further the understanding as to why juveniles are involving themselves in delinquent behaviors, we refer to the social disorganization theory created by Shaw and McKay in 1942. The nature of this theory stems from a community's informal social control deteriorates where higher rates of delinquency arise. Furthermore, parents, peers, and schools play a huge role in how they impact adolescent development and socialization. Parents are a parental figure model towards their children. And from birth until adulthood, parents are responsible for shaping the child's behaviors so they are suitable for society. If a parent acts in a negative way, the child is likely going to perceive the same attitude. And furthermore, parenting techniques have impacts on a child's behaviorism. And if the support is lacking, then you're going to see lack of support, weak bonds in the relationship between parent and child influence, which can lead to antisocial behavior and encourage affiliation with deviant peers. Recent findings in delinquent research have found consistent correlations between an individual's interaction with peers and delinquency. With society valuing conformity with the exception that all members part accept, involvement in deviant behaviors violate social norms. So instead, children seek peer cliques that conform and accept one another's like behaviors rather than the social norms. Therefore, the effect of peer influence with the community reflects upon the extent of delinquency. Also, we must consider that juvenile delinquency is attributed to poor socialization in school, insufficient education, and individual academic failure. Deviancy is a result of parental failure to ensure quality development in their child's social skills and behaviors, which leads to association with deviant peers in both the school and the community. Now let's discuss the proceedings of the juvenile court system. So this system is based on the philosophy of the parents' patriarch. The juvenile justice system has set in place a formal set of proceedings to adhere to juveniles' constitutional rights, and they rely on three basic subsystems of the juvenile justice system and the participating functions. The process begins with the youth being admitted to the juvenile court, with police officers being held responsible for referring juveniles. Probation officers also have to make decisions as to whether or not the juvenile can remain in the community or if that juvenile should be placed in a shelter or detention facility to receive services and treatments. These officers typically have many choices in determining how to handle a youth. Some more consequential cases do result in juveniles receiving a petition to appear in front of the juvenile court. Following that, the juvenile court judge hears the case of the juvenile, who is referred to the court. But it is important to note that juveniles issued to be transferred to adult court must be moved before further juvenile proceedings take place. Now, if this isn't the case, then an adjudicatory hearing takes place in order to determine whether the juvenile is guilty of the delinquent allegations stated in the petition. If it just so happens that the juvenile is found guilty of the alleged delinquent act in the previous stage, the sentencing stage of the juvenile proceedings begin the disposition hearing. And the primary purpose of this is to provide programs and services of treatment, training, and rehabilitation so that juveniles may be integrated successfully back into the community. A standard disposition consists of a warning followed by a release, probation, or a resolution to the Department of Corrections. In order for a juvenile to be released from supervision at an alternate facility, the juvenile must avoid unlawful behavior and conform to the laws of the facility. The ultimate goal of the juvenile court proceedings are as follows. There's not only to protect the minor and family from emotional and physical harm, but to guide the juvenile offender with steps to further prevent unlawful behavior. So juvenile incarceration remains to be a very controversial debate. The process of transferring juveniles to adult court has created substantial issues within whether or not it does more good harm than good. Firstly, treating juveniles as adults can give them justice to the victims and their loved ones. Even though crimes are almost always unforgivable acts, giving a juvenile a just punishment for their committed crime is a way for victims to potentially gain peace and appeasement. Also, juvenile incarceration expresses that no matter what age a juvenile is, they need to take full responsibility for their actions and have it been made clear so that they understand their consequences to the full extent of the law. Also, juvenile courts do not allow for the process of a fair trial. The juvenile process remains rather informal as compared to the adult court. And juvenile courts also do not have many of the same due process rights which the adult courts do. With that being said, juvenile court cases are decided individually by a judge, whereas if you incarcerate an adolescent as an adult, this gives them the rights that are written in the U.S. Constitution, along with a fair trial, including both the jury and the judge, to lead to the decision of guilty or not guilty. But there are drawbacks to juvenile incarceration, particularly concerning a juvenile's mental state of health and the potential to putting them at an unnecessary high risk. With the adolescent brain lacking the ability to regulate emotions and understand consequences like the adult brain, how is this even reasonable to subject juveniles to the same punishment? And not to mention, juveniles who are incarcerated are much more likely to be victimized, which can include all forms of sexual assault, and physical, emotional, and mental abuse, something that can be almost eliminated in the juvenile justice system. Now, in regards to the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act of 1974, the priority of the juvenile justice system was aimed at diverting youth from the formal processing of the adult justice system. Juveniles who are convicted as adults are limited to the types of punishment they receive, since the adult court judges have fewer options. The juvenile courts have the ability and responsibility to properly treat and rehabilitate juveniles based on their individual needs, and do necessary psychological tests to determine further treatment programs, recommended counseling, training skills, enforcing house arrest, curfew, and or whether or not the juvenile should be detained or released on parole. All in all, before juvenile courts decide to transfer a juvenile to the adult court system, all factors should be weighed out equally, especially because the juvenile and adult systems vary extensively. And there are many reasons why the two are separated, and this will only continue to aid into this controversial debate of juvenile incarceration. Juvenile rehabilitation programs aim towards reducing the likelihood that youth will continue a life of crime. Some widely known major facilities are the Hillcrest Training School in Ohio, the Hennepin County Home in Minnesota, and the Hogan Street Regional Center in Missouri. There are a number of features that distinguish these model rehabilitation programs from others. Specifically, the Hillcrest Training School has an educational program that helps students meet their educational needs through multiple curriculums designed to consider credit needs, vocational interests, skill deficiencies, and cognitive strategies for the classroom. Hillcrest also provides a cognitive behavioral treatment program consisting of 3 different tracks. The Hennepin County Home combines both features of campus and ranches population, which is made up of youthful offenders who've committed a variety of property and personal crimes. The treatment here uses modalities as an educational program that focuses on those with learning disabilities, family therapy, transactional analysis, behavior modification, and reality therapy. The Hogan Street Regional Center serves some of the most serious youthful offenders which committed to the youth services, and it's among one of the most secure residential treatment facilities. And one of their main missions is to maintain strong ties to the family. The youths receive educational services, guidance, and a variety of counseling services. Rehabilitative programs strive for excellence with the intent to integrate youthful offenders back into society in a way they won't seek or see involvement in the juvenile courts again. And these model programs resemble forms of strong leadership, dedication, pro-youth philosophy, and community involvement, and most importantly, safety. These facilities are organized with smallness and consistency in order for the staff to connect with residents in helping them identify and build trust. And throughout rehabilitation, family connections are not limited, but instead strengthened, since partnering with the family is an utmost priority. All in all, these 3 programs vouch for youth, giving them the tools they need to meet needs legally, their life skills, health, and a variety of services to help them ease the transition back into society. Thank you.